I got involved in the pipeline movement primarily from the focus of John Birch bringing attention to us, our attention to it, and realized that there are a tremendous amount of inherent risk in the pipeline with the CO2. If it would rupture, it could cause a lot of damage and a lot of deaths to a lot of people if that would occur. So with my background in water well construction, I did a lot of pump and reinjection water wells for geothermal systems in Iowa and for a lot of major schools, major high schools in the state of Iowa. And so I am somewhat familiar with injection wells, but realizing that injection wells in the state of Iowa and injection wells for CO2 sequestration are totally different concepts. But not in reality, they are not totally different concepts. They have a lot of relationships, and I had a lot of concerns about what problems that a sequestration well or injection well for CO2 carbon would create. And so, because of that, I wrote a letter to the IUB board with my concerns of what I felt that they should look out for in a CO2 well that was being proposed in Illinois at the time. Every geological formation is different, and there are no two that are alike. And some formations will easily accept, from my experience as far as groundwater, will easily accept groundwater being reinjected. There's a lot of formations that will not accept groundwater being reinjected. And so I would extrapolate that to the CO2 pipeline, maybe having the same issues. And any project that we ever did for pump and reinject for geothermal wells, there was always a protocol that you would drill a supply well, an injection well, and do a test injection and make sure that that formation would accept that water that we were reinjecting. And so has there been any of that done for the CO2 to make sure that the injection wells will work and will accept it? Because if they won't work and won't accept it, and you have all this liquid CO2 in the pipeline, what are you going to do with it? And so that's a real concern. And along with that is a concern that water wells are a different animal, and so are injection wells a different animal, and they have to be constructed to the highest standards to make sure they don't leak or don't rupture, because if they leak or rupture, what is going to happen with that CO2? Is it going to get into the other formations and underground and contaminate them? Or if it does rupture, is it going to rupture at the wellhead and create a leak? And if you're looking at injecting at 2,000 psi into an underground formation continually, where is that pressure all going to go? Is it going to remain in place, or is it going to eventually cause earthquakes or other tremors, or is it going to enough pressure build that will, regardless of how well you construct the injection well, will it cause the injection well to rupture? And then the question becomes also is who's going to oversee the construction of the injection wells? Who is going to design these injection wells? What contractor is going to drill them, and what expertise do they have in drilling these injection wells? And further, let's just say an injection well does plug, and that could be an issue because typically most injection wells over time will plug up or be restricted in time, and these wells have to be rehabilitated. I can't even envision how you would rehabilitate a CO2 injection well with carbon dioxide in it. And if you did rehabilitate those wells, what's the protocol? Who writes the protocol? What's the safety procedures? Is there any OSHA safety procedures for such a thing? And I highly doubt that there is. So all these questions need to be asked before they even consider putting a CO2 pipeline in place. And these are questions that typically won't get asked of the IUB, and I had a little bit of expertise that I brought it forward and express my concerns, and so that's why I've gotten involved the way I have. Yeah, as far as my letter that I sent to the IUB, I've not heard anything back from the IUB per se from them at all. I've heard feedback from a lot of people that I shared the letter with that had concerns, that thought the concerns were very valid concerns, and a couple summers ago, I think it was in 2022, there was a meeting in Fort Dodge, Iowa about the CO2 pipeline when this was just all coming to pass. And there was a state legislator from North Dakota there. and I don't remember his name, but I went up to him and told him that I'd written a letter to the IUB board and about my concerns I had about the injection wells, and I said, if you're interested, I would be happy to share that letter. And he said, by all means. So when I got home, I emailed the letter to him, and then a few weeks later, I heard back from him that because of the letter, that their particular county board of supervisors or county board of commissioners had rejected the injection well application that they had for that particular county. You know, initially, when I got involved because of the eminent domain issue. It took me probably well over a year to write that letter to the IUB board about my concerns. I thought about how I needed to write it and what concerns were that I needed to write. But the big issue was the fact that here is a private enterprise wanting eminent domain granted to a highly dangerous pipeline across Iowa, where it was clear that a lot of the farmers that I talked to didn't want any part of it. They were concerned about their own safety. They were concerned about their land being torn up and not put back properly. And so I just didn't see where the eminent domain really fit into this picture at all. And when you look at it, you know, who is it going to benefit? Well, there's a select few of people that are part of the pipeline company that is strictly going to benefit. I mean, how is it going to be any benefit to the average consumer out here in the state of Iowa? I don't see how it's going to benefit. We need CO2 all the time for our crops to grow, for our trees to grow, for our plants to grow. And frankly, if I was a farmer and landowner and I was raising a big corn crop, I would want my farm downwind of an ethanol plant so I could harvest all the CO2 from the ethanol plant. So again, going back to the whole thing, I think the eminent domain issue should not be used for a private CO2 pipeline, and that coupled with the dangers, it just makes no sense whatsoever. I'm not a climate expert, but I've never bought into the green issue whatsoever. There's been threats ever since I can remember about if we don't change this, or we're going to have global warming, we're going to have this problem or that problem. And I think this CO2 thing is just another gimmick for the green agenda. And again, is it going to benefit any of us out here sitting in a day-to-day lifestyle? Absolutely not. Another topic that really hasn't been addressed about the CO2 pipelines that really needs to be addressing, you know, from a perspective, is there any government agency overlooking this thing to see, is a CO2 carbon capture pipeline really going to work? And is there any problems with it, and what are the problems that might be associated with it? And one I can think of is it takes an enormous amount of power to compress 2,000 PSI. It takes enormous horsepower. From my background in the drilling industry, where we use a lot of large compressors, largest compressor I ever used was a 1,200 PSI booster compressor, and that was run with a Detroit, V12 Detroit. That consumed a lot of power, and you're going to have to use a lot of power day in and day out to keep this at each ethanol plant to compress this CO2. Plus, you're going to need CO2 or need boosters along the pipeline to continue to boost that pressure to get it into these sequestration wells. So the amount of power that's going to consume is just, in my opinion, astronomical. Again, I'm not an engineer, but somebody needs to ask those questions. What is the gain of this going to be versus what is the expense to capture this? And I think I could easily see how you would spend more power and resources to capture this than you would otherwise if you just left it alone. So I think the net effect could be negative on the capture of it. And so we had previously become acquainted with Sheriff Mack and had him up here to speak in 2013, and my wife and I said, let's spend any contributions that we would give to national candidates in the future to bringing somebody like Sheriff Mack in to speak to the public and try to get the sheriffs on board, because we were really concerned about where the future of America was going, and that at some point in time, at some day in the future, whenever, that our only source of order in this country might be the local county sheriff. So we brought Sheriff Mack in, and we followed up with Chris Ann Hall. I don't know who she is, but she's a constitutional attorney that supports county sheriffs as well too. And so we had those two come in and speak. Started forming a small group to try to get people on board with the county sheriff and their power and their ability they're the most powerful law enforcement person in the country, because they don't answer to anybody else in the country. They only answer to their constituents. And so they have the right to decide, what's going to be enforced in the county and what's not going to be enforced. But if you want to affect change, you have to do it at the local level. You're not going to affect change at the national level. I think anybody that's a farmer loves their independence, loves to be able to have the quiet lifestyle that they so dearly look forward to by living here. But if you couple that in with to live in the nightmare of a CO2 pipeline running across your property and having a problem with that rupturing at any point in time, to me that would be just a tremendous takeaway from having your privacy taken away. And that goes along with all these other things that's going on right now too. I know that there's a movement to tag all electronic tags on cattle, which would affect me personally. And what's the need for this? And this goes along with the whole climate agenda and the whole control agenda. And I think most Americans just simply want to live in peace and comfort and privacy out here in this little part of America that we so dearly cherish. So I hope that people will wake up, people will understand that if this goes through, it's just one more freedom that's been taken away from us. And I would urgently encourage everybody, regardless of where you live, to get involved in this movement. This eminent domain thing is not, the CO2 is not an eminent domain thing that should be used for the welfare of the public. And I just urgently plead with you to get involved any way you look at it, any way you can, to help stop this movement of wrong eminent domain. My wife and I joined the John Birch Society 10 years ago after we moved out here. There was an old guy that lived out here that's since passed away, may his soul rest in peace, and he was the one that said, "Gary, you need to join the John Birch Society." And the John Birch Society was way ahead of their time. They started back in the 50s and saw this coming a long time before everybody else did. And the John Birch Society provides a lot of good information, a lot of good leaders, and if you can find a few extra bucks a month to join the John Birch and stay involved, they will keep you probably as well informed as any place, any agency in the United States. They tell you the truth, they get to the truth, and I would just strongly encourage, if you can do that, become a member of the John Birch Society, and you will not have any regrets if you really care truly about America and the future of America and your future of your children and your grandchildren.